Hi everybody! I'm in the hotel room at Regional Championship Minneapolis, but I wanted to post a comprehensive deep dive of Amulet Titan. Over the past few weeks, I've talked quite a bit about the deck overall, the strategies in the deck, like card choices in the deck, flex lots and different builds, how to sideboard with the deck against the top 10 most popular decks in Modern, and tips and tricks and nuances and interesting play patterns with the deck. So I want to combine them all into one comprehensive deep dive. Enjoy!
What are you doing?
I must protect my precious amulet! Precious.
And I would say one of the major reasons to pick up Amulet Titan is that it's been around forever, so it certainly has staying power in the meta. It survived some bannings, and it remains one of the top decks over the course of the last, frankly, many years. It's essentially a combo deck that attempts to put Amulet of Vigor, or more recently Spelunking, on the battlefield, so your lands untap or enter untapped, and you play the tap lands that produce 2 mana, and so you're able to play multiple lands a turn to get multiple mana per land per turn, use abilities of your lands to interact with the board, and eventually cast a very early Primeval Titan to grab more lands and either kill your opponent or lock them out of the game. It's a combo deck that is frankly very hard to play, but it's a really fun puzzle to solve. It's hard to stop and play against, and it's very, very consistent. And if you like being rewarded for being good at a deck, Amulet Titan is certainly the deck in Modern for you. The people that are very good with Amulet Titan kick the crap out of the people that are just good with Amulet Titan. And that's not necessarily true with most decks in Modern. Its good matchups are Eldrazi, Domain Zoo, and Burn, and bad matchups include Belcher, Dimir Frog, Esper Oculus, and Mill. This is Amulet Titan in Modern. Whoops. Let's see if I can... a thing where we can show all the lands. Perfect. So this is Amulet Titan. It's been around for essentially ever, and it looks very, very different than the way it used to exist. And I'm going to go in a little bit of a different order today. I'm going to talk about these cards first, and then we're going to talk about the lands, because the lands are kind of the central part of this deck. Notice there's 32, which is an insane amount. But the general combo in this deck is having Amulet of Vigor or Spelunking on the battlefield. So Spelunking says it's a 3-mana enchantment. When this enchantment enters, draw a card. Then you may put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield. If you put a cave on the battlefield this way, you gain 4 life, which is kind of irrelevant. And this says lands you control enter untapped. Amulet of Vigor is a 1-mana artifact. Whenever a permanent you control enters tapped, untap it. So these mean that cards like Gruul Turf and Simic Growth Chamber, and frankly anything you grab with Primeval Titan, all enter untap or untap the same turn that you play it. I mean, Lotus Field, stuff like that. Which means you can immediately use the mana and use the ability. So in doing so, and having these like double mana lands that return a land you control to its owner's hand, but instead enter untapped or untap immediately. Instead, we're able to create this scenario where when we play these cards, they generate a crazy large amount of mana, especially when combined with something like Crumbling Vestige, where when it enters, add a mana, and then we play Gruul Turf, it untaps, tap Gruul Turf, and then the trigger happens, bring Crumbling Vestige back, and then use one of the many ways that we can play an additional land. Play Crumbling Vestige again, it enters untapped because of all this stuff, and when it enters, you add another mana, etc., etc. So this is combined with a Boreal Grazer, which is a 1-mana 0/3 with reach. When this creature enters, put a land card from your hand on the battlefield tapped, or untapped if we have one of these. Spelunking does it as well, which I've already read. And Explore is 2 mana. You may play an additional land this turn, draw a card. So between all of these cards right here, we are generating a large amount of mana very, very quickly. We're then able to use that mana to cast Primeval Titan, is our primary target here. Primeval Titan is a 6-mana 6/6 with trample. Whenever this creature enters or attacks, you may search your library for up to 2 lands, put them on the battlefield tapped, then shuffle. That, combined with essentially using our lands as one giant toolbox, is pretty disgusting and can lead to some gross combos. Another option is Cultivator Colossus, which can be grabbed with our Summoners packs. Cultivator Colossus is a 7-mana with trample. Cultivator Colossus' power and toughness are equal to the number of lands you control. When this creature enters, you may put a land card from your hand on the battlefield tapped. If you do, draw a card and repeat the process. And we have so many lands in our deck that this allows us to draw like most of our deck, and we should be able to combo kill or just straight up kill from there if we are able to get a Cultivator Colossus on the battlefield. Especially if we have one of these, because all those things enter untapped, even though it says tapped. We're also playing an Aftermath Analyst, and this is part of like kind of an interesting combo with Scape Shift and Lotus Field and stuff like that, where it's a 2-mana 1/3. When it enters, mill 3 cards. And we can pay 4 mana and sacrifice the creature, return all land cards from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. So this is very, very good alongside cards like Lotus Field, which make us sack our lands, and if it returns to the battlefield untapped, specifically with Amulet of Vigor and Spelunking, or it end with Scape Shift, where we sacrifice any number of lands, search your library for up to that many land cards, put them on the battlefield tapped, and then shuffle, which means lands go in the graveyard. We get to pick what lands we want to put on the battlefield, whether we make a lot of mana or whatever, and then we can activate Aftermath Analyst to bring back the stuff that we sacrificed, and et cetera, et cetera. There's additional combo to that, and I'm going to talk about that when we get into the lands. But then we're playing 2 Summoners Pact to grab those Primeval Titans, Cultivator Colossus, and Aftermath Analyst to do those sick combos. So let's get into the meat and potatoes of the deck, and I'm just kind of go in order and try to talk about it all as we go. We're playing 3 Boseiju. Boseiju is a legendary land at a green, and we can channel it to discard this card, destroy target artifact, enchantment, non-basic land an opponent controls. That player may search their library for a land card with a basic land type, put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle. This ability costs 1 less to activate for each legendary creature you control. So Boseiju is very, very good as like artifact and enchantment hate, and as a land we can put on the battlefield and be able to bounce with Gruul Turf and Simic Growth Chamber. Speaking of Gruul Turf and Simic Growth Chamber, I think I'm going to skip ahead to those, because when we search things up with Primeval Titan and we want an effect from a land, like from Otawara or Boseiju or something like that, we can grab Boseiju and Simic Growth Chamber or Gruul Turf, which are both lands that enter tapped. When this land enters, return a land you control to its owner's hand, and we can tap it to add 2 of the corresponding colors, red, green, or green, blue. But its ability, when this land enters, return a land you control to its owner's hand, we can then just return the Boseiju to our hand after, obviously, we've tapped it for mana from Amulet of Vigor or Spelunking, because those triggers all enter the battlefield. And then we can use the ability of Boseiju, even though it's kind of supposed to be on the battlefield with Primeval Titan, which is really, really cool. So this is similarly true with Crumbling Vestige. Enters tapped. When it enters, add 1 mana of any color. We can tap it, add a colorless. You know, we grab it with Primeval Titan, adds a color when it enters, untaps, we can tap it to add a mana and return it with Gruul Turf or Simic Growth Chamber. And then we can play it again, which is just ridiculous. We're playing an Echoing Deeps. Echoing Deeps is, you may have this land enter tapped as a copy of any land in the graveyard, except as a cave in addition to its other types. This allows us to sort of toolbox our graveyard for all of these lands and kind of recur stuff that might be in the graveyard or combos in the graveyard or whatever. Playing some forests, which I'm not going to go into. We're playing a Hanweir Battlements. Hanweir Battlements is a land where you can tap it to add a colorless. The other side of Hanweir Battlements doesn't matter. You can pay a red and tap it, have target creature gain haste until end of turn. And the rest of it literally doesn't matter. I'm not even going to read it. So this is a way to give your Primeval Titan haste and grab even more lands, or have a giant Cultivator Colossus and give it haste or whatever. Lotus Field is a hexproof land. This land enters tapped-ish. When it enters, sacrifice 2 lands, add 3 mana of any one color. We can grab Lotus Field when we want to have a lot of lands, or we are popping off with our Aftermath Analysts. We are playing Mirror Pool. This land enters tapped. We can tap to add a colorless. Pay 3 mana and sacrifice this land. Copy target instant sorcery spell you control. You may choose new targets for the copy. We're mostly not doing that one. But we can pay 5 mana and sacrifice this land to create a token that's a copy of target creature you control. Which means if we have a Primeval Titan, we grab Mirror Pool, maybe Lotus Field or whatever, sacrifice some lands, untap some stuff, crack Mirror Pool with our plethora of mana, copy the Primeval Titan. We get another Primeval Titan trigger, continue to toolbox our deck. Maybe grab a Talaria West and a bounce land, bounce the Talaria West with the trigger from the bounce land, transmute for a Summoner's Pact, grabbed Aftermath Analyst, play Aftermath Analyst, crack it to bring all the stuff back, including Mirror Pool, to copy another Primeval Titan. This Primeval Titan grabbing something like Shifting Woodland to copy Aftermath Analyst, to crack it and bring back everything, including Mirror Pool. And you see how this goes on and on and on. And then we can kind of give everything haste with Hanweir Battlements, which is just ridiculous. Speaking of Otawara, in the same category as Beseiju, it's a legendary land. We can tap it to add a blue, channel it for 4 mana, discard this card, return target artifact, creature, enchantment, or planeswalker to its owner's hand. This ability costs 1 less to activate for each legendary creature you control. This is just a great way to toolbox permanent removal with Primeval Titan or Scapeshift or whatever when paired with one of the bounce lands. Shifting Woodland is, which I've already talked about kind of, and it's tapped unless you control a forest. We can tap it at a green. It has Delirium, which is pretty reasonably easy to get Delirium in this deck. 4 mana, this lands become a copy of target permanent card in your graveyard till end of turn. Activate only if there are 4 or more card types among cards in your graveyard. So what's kind of interesting about this card, point of it is that combo I kind of already went over with Aftermath Analyst, being able to copy Aftermath Analyst, sacrifice it, because sacrificing Aftermath Analyst is a part of the copy, which means shifting Woodlands back on the battlefield. And it's effectively an infinite combo of being able to like keep cracking mirror pools over and over and hitting Primeval Titan and blah, 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 which is just ridiculous. Mycosynth Gardens is a land. You can tap it to add a colorless. You can pay 1 and tap it to add 1 mana of any color. You pay X and tap it to have this land become a copy of target non-token artifact you control with mana value X. Multiple Amulet of Vigors is absolutely disgusting. And so being able to copy Amulet of Vigor with Mycosynth Gardens can just end the game pretty easily. Playing Talaria West. Enters tapped, we can tap to add a blue and can transmute it for 3 mana. Transmute it, meaning we discard that card, then search your library for a card with mana value 0, review it, put it into your hand, then shuffle. Transmute only as a sorcery. Which means we grab Summoner's Pact, which Talaria West in our hand means that we can grab our creatures and toolbox our deck for those creatures, and do the Aftermath Analyst combo, which is just disgusting. Again, this is kind of in the same category as Otawara and Beseiju. Normally when you're searching up Talaria West with like Primeval Titan or whatever, you're grabbing it with one of the bounce lands so you can immediately put it into your hand. We're playing an Urza's Cave. It's a colorless land where we can pay 3 mana and tap it and sacrifice it. Search your library for a land card, put it on the battlefield tapped, then shuffle. This allows us to like assemble any sort of combo, which, by the way, I'm focusing a lot on the Aftermath Analyst, like effectively infinite combo, but really you can just like make multiple Primeval Titans, give them haste and kill them like really, really easily. We're playing Urza's Saga. It's a cool alternate win condition. Also being an enchantment land, it turns on Delirium pretty well. Its first chapter is, it gains tap it to add a colorless mana. Second chapter, the saga gains pay 2 mana and tap it to create a 0/0 colorless artifact creature token. With this token gets +1/+1 for each artifact you control. And its third chapter is where you sacrifice it. Search your library for an artifact card with mana value 0 or 1, put it on the battlefield, then shuffle. So this exists as an alternate win condition, but also it tutors up the Amulet of Vigors, which is disgusting. And they're playing a single Vesuva. You may have this land enter the battlefield tapped as a copy of any land on the battlefield, which is super toolboxy when we have a lot of lands on the battlefield. So the point of this deck, get as much mana as possible using these untap effects. Be able to play a Primeval Titan to grab lands, to eventually fetch out an Aftermath Analyst in whatever form necessary. We can also just Scapeshift into this as well. Aptly play Aftermath Analysts, bring all those lands back. Be able to Talaria West a Primeval Titan, then Mirror Pool the Primeval Titan, and then like copy the Aftermath Analyst with Shifting Woodland, and cycle through and eventually just kill our opponent. As far as sideboard goes, stock up's very good against decks that can answer our combo, so we need to be able to dig even deeper. Dismember, additional removal. Vampire's Vengeance, very good against like energy and stuff like that, decks that are trying to out aggro you. 6, I feel like, is in a similar category as stock up. 3 mana 2/4 with reach. Whenever it attacks, mill 3 cards. You may put a land card from among them into your hand. During your turn, non-land permanents in your graveyard have retrace. So basically good against decks that are good at removing our Primeval Titan or whatever. Tireless Tracker is a 3 mana 3/2 with landfall. Whenever land enters, investigate. Whenever you sacrifice a clue, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. So this gives an alternate win condition and additional draw against decks that are answering our combo and can actually interact with us. Force of Vigor is our great artifact and enchantment hate. Bajuka Bog for additional graveyard hate. Forest we can bring in if we're worried about Ghost Quarter effects, which actually exist in Modern at the moment. And Otawara, be able to remove problematic permanents. As far as the sideboard goes, we're playing Elish Norn for decks that have a ton of enter the battlefield effects that we need to stop. Dismember as additional creature removal, especially against decks that have important creatures. Vampire's Vengeance as a board wipe. against some weenie decks. Collector Oof as artifact hate, Keen-Eyed Curator as some graveyard hate, 6 as an additional threat and win condition against decks like counterspell decks and decks that can stop our hate, or Force of Vigor as additional artifact hate, Green Sun Zenith. Similar to 6, we're playing Green Sun Zenith against decks that have a lot of ways to stop what we're doing, just be able to provide additional threats. Bazooka Bog as graveyard hate that we can tutor with Scapeshift and Primeval Titan. Forest as additional basic land against like Ghost Quarter decks and stuff. And Otawara as additional board removal. That being said, the most popular deck in Modern is Boros Energy. Against Boros Energy, we obviously want the Vampire's Vengeance, so we can stop the Ocelot Pride, Nut Hands, and whatnot, as well as Dismembers, so we can kind of stop what's going on. And we're going to be taking out a number of Arboreal Grazer, just because while it's a blocker, like, who cares? Like, this is an awful card to draw against this deck, and so this is how I'm going to sideboard against Boros Energy. The second most popular deck is Dimir Murktide. Against Murktide, we're bringing in 6 because they're pretty good at stopping our initial strategy. Dismember to kind of stop their frog, Nut Hands, Green Sun Zenith, again, just as additional threats. Bazooka Bog, because it turns off being able to give their creature flying and also like Murktide stuff. Otawara to be able to interact with the board, and we're bringing in the Forest because we're bringing out some of the draw power in the deck. Bringing out Scapeshift, it's just too easy to like stop what you're doing. Bringing out and a number of Explores, because it isn't about doing it fast, it's about weathering the storm as far as their counter magic goes. So this is how I'm going to sideboard against Dimir Murktide. Next up is Eldrazi Ramp. Against Eldrazi, we're bringing in the Force of Vigor. It's kind of nice if you can snipe a Talisman or a Utopia Sprawl or whatever. Bringing in Collector Oof, and sometimes being able to stop the Talisman hands is really nice. Green Sun Zenith, so we can tutor out those super hate cards and whatnot. And Bazooka Bog to keep them off Emrakul, which is horrifying. We're going to be cutting the Cultivator Colossus. Gonna be shaving on a whole bunch of stuff like Spelunking, Arboreal Grazer, which doesn't do any blocking or like anything, just kind of speeds stuff up. And this I'm a sideboard against Eldrazi. The fourth most popular deck is Ruby Storm. Against Ruby Storm, bringing in Force of Vigor to answer that Ruby. Dismember to answer Ral, because that's the name of the game. Stop the cost reducers. Keen-Eyed Curator's powerful graveyard hate to stop Past in Flames. Bringing in the Green Sun Zenith and Bazooka Bog as well. And we're going to be cutting the Cultivator Colossus. 3 Spelunking. 3 of the Explorers, because we need to hate them out, and those are the cuttable cards. This on a sideboard against Ruby Storm. The fifth most popular deck is Amulet Titan. I love Force of Vigor. Be able to answer the Amulet of Vigor and the Spelunking, so they can't do any super combos. There's an argument for Elish Norn, but I don't like the fact that, you know, their lands can just hang out. Really don't love that. And we're bringing in Elish Norn, so they can't necessarily combo us. It's pretty bad against like Lotus Field and their dual lands, but stops Valakut, stops Primeval Titan, stops Cultivator Colossus, you know, whatever. And we're just going to shave on Arboreal Grazer. And this is how I'm going to sideboard against Amulet Titan. The sixth most popular deck is Belcher. Against Belcher, bringing in Collector Oof because they can't combo us. Green Sun Zenith, so we can tutor out that Collector Oof, and Force of Vigor, just in case they just jam Belcher and pass the turn, which happens. And we're just going to shave on Arboreal Grazer and Explore, and that's how we're going to sideboard against Belcher. Next up is Domain Zoo. We're bringing in Dismember so we can answer some amount of the creatures. And that's really all I like against the deck. Sort of shaving some Arboreal Grazer like we always do, it feels like. This time I'm a sideboard against Domain Zoo. The eighth most popular deck is Affinity. Against Affinity, obviously Collector Oof is great, as well as Force of Vigor, Green Sun, so we can tutor out that Collective Oof even easier. And we're just going to be shaving on Arboreal Grazer and Explore. And this time I'm going to sideboard against Affinity. The ninth most popular deck is Broodscale. Against the Broodscale deck, bringing in Dismember so we can break up the combo. Similarly with Vampire's Vengeance is pretty decent at breaking up the combo. So can Force of Vigor and Collector Oof as well. We're going to be shaving the cards that we kind of normally do. Actually, we're going to bring in Green Sun Zenith so we can search out the Collector Oof. Boreal Grazer, Explore, and Spelunking, leaving one end of each on the side of my sideboard against Broodskill. And then the 10th most popular deck is the black-white mid-range deck. Against this deck, we're bringing in the Elesh Norns because everything is entered to the battlefield effect. In that deck, we're bringing in Vampire's Vengeance to wipe their board of almost everything. Dismember to answer individual creatures. And the Forest because we're going to bring out some lands. We're cutting 3 of Boreal Grazer. Bye, Steve. And then we are going to be cutting all of the Urza Saga because it's just so they have so much incidental enchantment and artifact hate. Them being able to just easily kill Urza Saga almost every time is miserable. So it's on the sideboard against Black-White. So these are the non-flex slots of Amulet Titan. If you play Amulet Titan, you're pretty much bought into having to play these 51 cards in the main deck and these 5 cards in the sideboard. But that's not what this video is about. This video is about what cards should you play in the leftover 9 slots in the main deck and the 10 slots in the sideboard? Well, these are your options. You have 24 cards to pick from to fill 9 slots for the main deck, and then you have 19 cards to pick from to fill the 10 slots in the sideboard. So let's talk about these cards so you can make your decision. You can play Cavern of Souls. It is a land. As it enters, choose a creature type. You can tap it to add a colorless mana, or you can tap it to add 1 mana of any color. Spend this mana only to cast a creature spell of the chosen type. That spell can't be countered. It's decent against counterspell decks if counterspells end up being a little bit better in Modern. Really good against Murktide because you can, again, fetch up this Cavern of Souls and then use it to cast your Titans. You can play Dryad Arbor. Dryad Arbor is a forest dryad. It is a 1/1 and also a land. A major downside of this card is that because it's a creature, when you play it at summoning 6, you can't use the mana from it, but also it is a creature that allows you to block, attack with it, pump up with your cards, you know, whatever. You can play the basic forest. You can play Gruul Turf, which is land that enters tapped. When it enters, return a land you control to its owner's hand. You can tap to add a red and a green. This would be the 4th Gruul Turf, I believe, just as additional bounce land stuff. Same thing with Selesnya Sanctuary, except it's green-white, and then same thing with Simic Growth Chamber, which is green-blue. Depending on which one of these you pick, it kind of depends on what other cards you're playing in the other flex slots, like Mystical Dispute or Dismember or whatever. You can play 2 Mycosynth Gardens. Mycosynth Gardens is a land that you tap it to add a colorless. You can pay 1 and tap it to add 1 mana of any color. And you can pay X and tap it to have this land become a copy of target non-token artifact you control with mana value X. So this allows us to copy cards like Amulet of Vigor. You can also copy like Expedition Map, which is really nice, but it can give you the second Amulet, which means that like a Titan is just a kill, which is pretty cool. Though it's a pretty bad land if you're not doing exactly that, and it's no longer a land when you copy that Amulet of Vigor, so that kind of sucks too. You play Urza's Cave. Urza's Cave is a land that taps at a colorless. You pay 3 mana and tap it and sacrifice to search your library for a land card, put it on the battlefield tapped, then shuffle. It allows us to tutor our deck for the lands for whatever situation is needed, whether it be needing more mana or grabbing that Cavern of Souls or whatever. I can play Valakut the Molten Pinnacle. It's land that enters tapped whenever a mountain you control enters. If you control at least 5 other mountains, you may have this land deal 3 damage to any target, and you can tap it to add a red. So we aren't going to be playing actually that many mountains, but we can play Dryad of Elysian Grove, which makes lands every basic land type. And it's a 3 mana 2/4, and you can play additional land on each one of your turns and you play that card. But when it's every basic land type, then everything is a mountain, so you can cast cards like Scapeshift or Primeval Titan and stuff like that and trigger Valakut, which is pretty cool. Though again, similar to like Mycosynth Gardens, if you're not doing the thing, this is a pretty awful land. You play another Summoner's Pack. Summoner's Pack's 0 mana instant. Search your library for a green creature card, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle. And at the beginning of your next upkeep, pay 4 mana. If you don't, you lose the game. This allows us to tutor our deck, but if we don't like kill our opponent the turn that we tutor, we have to like use some mana the following turn, which is pretty miserable. You can play an Expedition Map. Expedition Map's 1 mana artifact. You can pay 2 mana and tap it and sacrifice it to search your library for a land card, reveal it, put it in your hand, and then shuffle. Again, this allows us to tutor our deck. It's something we can grab off of Urza Saga. We can play up to 4 Explorers. Explorer is a 2 mana sorcery. You may play an additional land this turn and draw a card. This allows us to churn through our deck and ramp effectively. I can play up 3 Malevolent Rumble. is a 2-mana sorcery. Reveal the top 4 cards of your library. You may put a permanent card from among them into your hand. Put the rest into your graveyard. Create a 0/1 colorless Eldrazi spawn creature token. With sacrifice this token, add a colorless. This allows us to ramp and also search through our deck because most of our deck, a giant majority of our deck actually are permanent cards. And so this kind of acts as a green ponder for us, which is really nice. I've already talked about Dryad. You play a Cultivator Colossus. This is a 7-mana star with trample. Its power and toughness are equal to the number of lands you control. And when this creature enters, you may put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield tapped. If you do, draw a card and repeat this process. So Cultivator Colossus is really good to search up if we are looking for a non-land card out of our deck and looking to be able to kill on the back of this one creature, because it allows us to totally churn through our deck and sort of end the turn with a fistful of non-lands. Play up 3 Green Sun Zenith. Green X sorcery. Search your library for a green creature card, mana value X or less. Put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle Green Sun Zenith into its owner's library. It's just another tutor effect, though it's really mana intensive, so it's really only good against decks that are actively interacting with us putting our combo together. So if you happen to be playing against a lot of those, like Murktide or something like that, then Green Sun Zenith is really solid. So you're going to be selecting 9 of these 24 cards for your main deck. And let's look at your sideboard. You could be playing up to 3 Mystical Dispute. It's a 3-mana instant, but it costs 2 less if it targets a blue spell. Counter target spell unless the controller pays 3. So effectively 1 mana counter spell for counter spells. This is really good, again, if you're playing against a lot of counter spell decks, which happen to be very good against us. You play Dismember. It is 3 mana, 2 Phyrexian Black, and 1 target creature gets -5/-5 till end of turn. We're not playing a lot of intensive colors that have good removal, so being able to play a card like Dismember to be able to have that removal is really solid. You can play Pyroclasm. 2-mana sorcery, deals 2 damage to each creature. Very good against these go wide strategies like Energy, in addition to even more Vampire's Vengeance for the same reason. You play Collector Oof. It is a 2-mana 2/2. Activated abilities of artifacts can't be activated. Good against the Affinity deck and Belcher, and we can also tutor it up. You play 6. It's a 3-mana 2/4 with reach. Whenever 6 attacks, mill 3 cards. You may put a land card from among them into your hand. And during your turn, non-land permanent cards in your graveyard have retrace, which means you can cast them by discarding a land card in addition to paying other costs. This card is good if we need an alternate win condition and be doing more things than just fighting to get to the combo. So 6 is really solid in that way. Similar thing with Tireless Tracker. It is a 3-mana 3/2 with landfall. Whenever a land you control enters, investigate, which means create a clue token, which is an artifact with pay 2 mana to and sacrifice it to draw a card. And whenever you sacrifice a clue, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. It's, again, a alternate win condition. Allows us to do stuff other than the primary game plan of the deck, similar to 6. We already talked about Green Sun Zenith, but you could play it in the sideboard. You can play a single Bazooka Bog. It's a land that enters tapped. When it enters, exile target player's graveyard, and you can tap it to add a black. Tapping it to add a black doesn't really matter, but it's a land that when it enters, you get to exile their graveyard. So if you need graveyard hate, you can search up Bazooka Bog, because there's a lot of ways to tutor lands in this deck, and you can even bounce it back to your hand and replay it with, Gruul Turf, Selesnya Sanctuary, Simic Growth Chamber, or whatever. Play another Boseiju. Boseiju, legendary land. You can tap to add a green. You can channel it, which means pay 2 mana and discard it to destroy target artifact, enchantment, or non-basic land an opponent controls. That player may search a library for a land card with a basic land type, put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle. This ability costs 1 less to activate for each legendary creature you control. Great artifact enchantment hate that we can tutor up. You can play that Cavern of Souls in the sideboard, which we've already talked about. And same thing with the forests, which is very good against Ghost Quarter effects and stuff like that. Speaking of Ghost Quarter, you can play Ghost Quarter. It's the land. You can tap it to add a colorless. You can tap it and sacrifice it, destroy target land. Its controller may search their library for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield, and then shuffle. Very good against decks that have lands that produce multiple mana, or lands that you really need to answer, like the Mirror Match or Eldrazi or something. Again, we can tutor it. Ottawara Soaring City is a legendary land. You can tap it to add a blue and channel it by paying 4 mana and discarding it. To return target artifact, creature, enchantment, or planeswalker to its owner's hand, this ability costs 1 less to activate for each legendary creature you control. Very good against problematic permanents that we need to deal with, whether they're attacking or whatever. And we can play a Vexing Bauble. Vexing Bauble is a 1 mana artifact. Whenever a player casts a spell, if no mana was spent to cast it, counter that spell. You can pay 1 mana, tap it, and sacrifice it to draw a card, so you can cash it in. So Vexing Bauble, it's important to note, counters our own Summoner's Pact, which kind of sucks, but also very good against forces like Force of Vigor or Force of Negation or whatever, and we can sacrifice it the turn we want to play our own Summoner's Pact, and it's tutorable whether it's a Saga, so that's all very powerful. So you're going to be selecting 10 of these 19 cards for the sideboard. You're going to be selecting 9 of these 24 cards for your main deck, and then you will make your very own but stock version of Amulet Titan in Modern. First off, if you have Spelunking and Amulet of Vigor in play, lands that don't specify that they enter the battlefield tapped must enter the battlefield untapped. However, like Valka the Molten Pinnacle and Simic Growth Chamber or whatever, you can choose to have them enter tapped even within a Spelunking. And the reason you want to do that is if you have more than one amulet, you can generate more mana off of your lands if they enter tapped versus if they entered untapped. Once in a great while, you can have Vesuva enter the battlefield without copying any land, just to have it enter untapped. And there are some situations you want to do this. One example that my friend gave me when I was talking to them about ideas for this video is that if he has turn 3 and you have only 2 forests on the battlefield, and in hand you have Vesuva, Bounce Land, Dryad, Untapped Land, Grazer, you can play the land in your hand that enters untapped and then play Dryad. Then for the second land drop, play Vesuva, copy nothing. And because it didn't copy anything, it enters untapped. And Dryad gives Vesuva all basic land types, so it still taps for mana of any color. And so with the untapped Vesuva, you can play Grazer. And with the Grazer trigger, you can play a bounce land and bounce Vesuva back to your hand. In matches with counter magic, you can grab your Summoner's Pact, grabbing the game-winning creature, then play Cavern of Souls to make sure there's no window and actually preventing the resolution of the creature. Because generally a lot of counterspell decks will let you resolve the Summoner's Pact with intention of countering the creature, because if things go poorly for them, the resolved Summoner's Pact means that it messes up your following turn. And when holding information in these matchups is really, really important to manipulate your opponent, because the individual cards in your deck have a hard time closing games. As far as playing against Titan, land hate is insane. So whether it's Boseiju, Blood Moon, Harbinger, whatever. For the record though, Harbinger is better than Blood Moon because Titan can only answer Harbinger with like Otawara or Dismember, where Blood Moon can be answered with a play set of Boseiju and other enchantment hate. If your deck is just faster than Titan, then you should focus on just being faster rather than hating out Titan. For example, Storm. It's a faster deck, so they should just be faster. Hand disruption is insane against Titan because 99% of the time, the Titan deck is planning on just winning with one card. And Consign to Memory is super good because it counters all the creature abilities, or the triggered abilities at least, and it allows you to interact with the amulet super early. Artifact and Enchantment Hate, very, very good because it lets you to destroy Spelunking, Saga, Dryad, and Amulet. And kind of going off of that Cavern of Souls trick, if you're a counterspell deck, letting the Summoner's Pact resolve and then countering the creature essentially time locks them the following turn very often, and sometimes they'll just win you the game. But those are some interesting tips and tricks for the Amulet Titan deck in Modern.
If you like this video, please be sure to like and subscribe. Check me out on social medias. Links are above me and in the description. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.